Sophia Reyes got the job on a Tuesday in November, which she later wrote in her diary as the day everything split into before and after, though I didn't know it yet. She was 23. The kind of 23 that still ate cereal for dinner, kept exactly one houseplant alive through guilt rather than care, and had a savings account balance that made her laugh when she checked it, because the alternative was crying. She had spent 2 years at a small literary magazine that paid her in bylines and the quiet suggestion that experience was its own currency. Her mother had called it character building. Sophia had called it poverty with good grammar. When the offer came from Boss Media Group, a real salary, a health plan that covered actual things, and an office on the 42nd floor of a building she had walked past her entire adult life without ever imagining she'd work inside, she said yes before the HR coordinator finished the sentence. The Boss Media building was 60 stories of black glass and steel at the center of the city. It did not invite you. It simply existed, massive and indifferent, catching the winter sky and giving nothing back. The people who worked inside it called it the coffin. Never to anyone's face. Never in an email. But, in elevators, in whispered lunches at the deli 3 blocks away where the staff went to remember they were still human, always the coffin. Sophia learned about Adrian Voss the way everyone did. In pieces. Sideways. The way you look at something too bright to face directly. Marcus, the senior assistant who processed her onboarding paperwork, was the first person to describe him. Marcus had the patient, slightly worn manner of someone who had explained the same man many times and arrived at a kind of peace with explaining him forever. He was sorting her building access cards with practiced efficiency when Sophia asked the question she had been holding for 2 days. What's he actually like? Marcus did not stop sorting. He arrives at 4:30 in the morning. Sometimes 4. He works on the 58th floor. You're on 42. He slid her badge across the desk. If you happen to share an elevator with him, look at the floor. That's dramatic, Sophia said. It's practical, Marcus said. He looked up. He had kind, careful eyes that had witnessed a great deal and processed it quietly. He's not cruel. He's precise. There's a difference. Precision in a person of his power just looks like coldness from the outside. He paused. Stay on 42. You'll be fine. She stayed on 42. For exactly 3 days. On the 4th morning, a Friday, which in her memory always had a particular kind of gray winter light, she arrived at 6:15 because she had been too nervous to sleep and had decided that usefulness was better than lying awake organizing her anxieties into categories. The 40th floor kitchen had the better espresso machine, which everyone on every floor between 38 and 45 knew and no one acknowledged out loud because acknowledging it would require explaining why they were on the wrong floor. Sophia stood at it, still learning its dial settings, her coat still on, her bag still on her shoulder. She heard the elevator behind her open. She heard footsteps. Slow. Steady. The specific quality of footstep that belongs to someone who has never once been uncertain about where they were going. She remembered Marcus. She looked at the machine. The grind setting is wrong. The voice came from close behind her left shoulder. Not threatening. Not warm. Simply there, like a fact. She startled enough to lose her grip on the coffee cup she hadn't finished filling. It splashed against the counter. She turned around. Adrian Voss was taller than the lobby photographs suggested, which was strange because the lobby photographs were already sized to be significant. He was in a black suit with no tie, a white shirt open one button at the collar. His face was the kind of face that either stopped you in your tracks or unsettled you, and sometimes did both in the same second, all clean angles and geometry, a jaw that looked like it had been decided rather than grown, a mouth that appeared to have formed a permanent opinion about the world and stopped revising it. Dark hair. The first thread of silver at the temple, worn not as age but as punctuation. He was pointing at the espresso machine. Medium grind, he said. This blend needs fine. You're making hot water with aspirations. Sophia looked at the dial. She looked at him. I can fix it. I'll fix it. He stepped past her and did. He worked the machine with the same quality of attention he probably gave to quarterly reports, total, efficient, unbothered by the presence of other people. His coffee was done in under 2 minutes. He took it. He left. She stood in the kitchen and listened to the elevator close. That night, she opened the diary Nadia had given her at the going-away dinner. It was small and navy blue with a plain silver clasp. Nadia had pressed it into her hands and said, "Write everything down. The boring parts especially. The boring parts always become something later." Sophia sat on the edge of her bed. She uncapped the pen. She wrote 4 words. He glanced at me today, * she didn't see him again for 9 days. The 42nd floor had its own complete world. Sophia learned it the way you learn any ecosystem, by watching who was afraid of whom, and where the water ran. Her department was content acquisitions. She read manuscripts, wrote coverage reports, attended meetings where people used the word synergy without irony, and worked for a manager named Helen who had the build and the energy of someone who had decided very early in life that she would be excellent and had never once revisited that decision. Helen told Sophia on the first morning, "Good work is expected. Exceptional work is noted. Bad work does not exist in this department because I have organized things so that it cannot." Sophia liked Helen immediately. Helen ran a clean, clear operation and did not make things complicated. The mythology of Adrian Voss, meanwhile, collected around her like weather. She heard it in the kitchen. In the elevator. In the bathroom where people spoke freely because they believed sound could not escape tile. He had taken over the company at 29 after his father's death, not gradually, not ceremonially, but immediately and completely, like someone stepping into a river without testing the temperature. He had restructured 4 divisions in 18 months. He had made decisions that ended careers, and had made them without apparent difficulty. He worked through weekends. He was seen at industry events twice a year, at which he stood near the wall and spoke selectively and made investors feel, without doing much of anything, that the world was under control. He had never once been seen eating in the building cafeteria. "The Vampire King," said Priya, one of the senior editors on Sophia's floor, on the Thursday of Sophia's second week. They were in the kitchen. Sophia had made the mistake of asking why the room went slightly quiet when someone mentioned the 58th floor. "That's what everyone calls him." "Because he's cold?" "Because he's here before sunrise." Priya counted on her fingers. "Doesn't eat with humans. Nobody ever sees him age. He once dissolved an entire division during a phone call and apparently ate lunch afterward without mentioning it." She topped up her coffee. "Vampire King. It fits." Sophia wrote it down that night. The Vampire King. They call him that like it's funny, but when they say it their voices do a specific thing, not quite fear, not quite reverence. Something between. Like people who live near a volcano and have made their peace with it but haven't forgotten what it can do. I'm probably overthinking a man who just adjusted my coffee settings and told me my water had aspirations *, but the name doesn't feel wrong. The second time she saw him up close, she wasn't supposed to be there at all. Helen had sent her to the 51st floor with a printed file, a manuscript analysis, bound the way Helen required, corners crisp, no loose pages. The meeting was already in progress when she arrived. The door was open. Through the glass panel she could see 12 people seated around a long table, and, at the head, facing the door directly, Adrian Voss. He was speaking when Sophia walked in. He stopped. Every head at the table turned. She held up the file. "For Mr. Reeve. From Helen Marsh, 42. A man near the door took it without standing. Adrian Voss looked at her. Not with the scanning evaluation of someone assessing a stranger, not with the polite vacancy of someone processing an interruption. Something more specific. The way a very careful instrument registers something new and immediately begins to categorize it. 3 seconds. "Thank you," he said. Directly at her. Sophia nodded. She left. In the elevator going down she breathed out slowly and told herself that nothing had happened, that she was a person who had delivered a file and been thanked, which was a transaction that happened 100 times a day in this building and meant absolutely nothing. In her diary that night she wrote about those 3 seconds for half a page. The diary became a practice before she fully noticed it was one. She wrote in it every few nights, sometimes daily when the contents of her head needed organizing outside of it. Work. Her apartment radiator, which had developed a leak and a personality simultaneously. Her mother's weekly calls, which were loving and slightly exhausting in equal parts. Nadia's ongoing romantic disasters, narrated in real time via increasingly long voice notes. She wrote about all of it with the same honest attention. But a portion of every entry, even on days when she genuinely meant for it not to happen, circled back to him. She was not dramatic about this. She recognized the difference between interest and fantasy, and she was careful to stay on the right side of it. But there was something in writing about him that functioned like pressing on a bruise. Specific. Informative. A little compulsive. He walked past the 42nd floor today. He was on his phone, speaking in a tone I hadn't heard before, very quiet, very precise, like each word was being checked before it was released. He didn't stop. He didn't look up. I caught his eye for exactly 1 second through the glass wall, *. He looked tired, *. Not humanly tired. Not the way people look after bad sleep. The way old buildings look tired, like something has been carrying a great weight for a long time and has simply gotten on with it, *. I don't know why I noticed that. I don't know why it matters, *. Nadia came for dinner on a Thursday in December, brought 1 bottle of wine and insufficient food, and sat across from Sophia at the small kitchen table while Sophia explained what she hadn't been able to say in texts. He sounds intense, Nadia said. He is. Are you interested in him or do you like him? Those are different things. Sophia considered this the way she considered most things, honestly and a little slower than comfortable. I don't know him well enough to like him, she said. He's interesting. He's the most interesting person in the building and possibly in the city, and I'm not sure that's a compliment or a warning. It's both, Nadia said. Sophia. You've mentioned him in every text you've sent me in 6 weeks. That's not, Sophia stopped. She thought about it. Every text? Every text. Sophia poured more wine. Nadia poured more wine. The bottle was finished before either of them meant it to be. It's not what you're thinking, Sophia said. I'm not thinking anything, Nadia said, in the tone of someone thinking several very specific things. Later, Nadia gone, dishes done, the city making its late-night sounds outside, Sophia opened the diary. She wrote about what Nadia had said. Then, she wrote what she hadn't been able to say aloud. She's right. I know she's right. I'm not staring into the eclipse, but I know exactly where it is. I know the quality of light it makes around itself. I know the specific change in a room when he's somewhere inside it. That's too much to know about a person I've spoken to twice. *. He fixed my coffee settings. *. He said thank you. *. That's the whole list. *. January arrived with the particular ruthlessness of a new year that has decided to be honest. The radiator was fixed. Sophia got better at the espresso machine. She received a quarterly review from Helen that used the word rigorous twice, which in Helen's vocabulary was roughly equivalent to a standing ovation. She saw him 4 more times in January. None of them were conversations. One was an elevator, she was already inside, he stepped in on the 39th floor, phone in hand, reading something. He didn't look up. She looked at the floor. When he stepped out at 51, he said, without turning, the lobby temperature report says 42 is running cold. Report it to facilities. He was gone before she could respond. She reported it to facilities. The floor was warmer within the week. She wrote 2 diary entries about it. The first was practical, just what had happened, ordered clearly. The second, written 3 nights later when she was being honest with herself, was something else. He noticed the temperature on a floor that isn't his. He said something about it to a person he barely knows. He didn't wait for a response because he knew the response was already given. *. There's a kind of care that doesn't announce itself. That just quietly handles things, I think that's the most frightening thing about him, by February she had written 63 diary entries. 51 mentioned him, directly or at the edges. She did not count them again after January. It felt like information she didn't need to formalize. The project came on a Wednesday in mid-February. Helen called her into the office, a small glass box at the corner of the floor, and sat across the desk with a folder and an expression that was not quite neutral. "There's a cross-departmental acquisition review," she said. 3 months. It involves the editorial, legal, and executive divisions. You've been requested for the acquisitions team. Sophia waited for the rest. The executive lead, Helen said carefully, is Adrian Voss. The folder landed on the desk between them. Sophia looked at it. She looked at Helen. Helen had the practiced face of someone who asked no personal questions because she required no personal answers, but her eyes were doing something careful and observant. "It's an opportunity," Helen said. "A real one." "I know," Sophia said. She took the folder. She took the elevator down to 42. She sat at her desk. She opened the folder. The project documentation was dense and detailed, and she read every page twice. At home that night, she did not open the diary right away. She made tea. She stood at her window for a while, watching the city below, the lights that never fully went dark. Then, she sat down and opened to a clean page. February 14th, ironic date, probably I've been assigned to the Meridian Acquisition Review. 12 weeks. The executive lead is him, every reasonable part of me knows this is a professional opportunity. It is. Helen said so. The folder says so. The scope of the project says so, but there is a very specific and not particularly reasonable part of me that has been waiting, without my full permission, for a reason to be in the same room as him regularly, and now I have one, I should probably be more careful than I feel like being right now, I'll be careful tomorrow. Tonight I'm just going to sit here and let myself feel the thing I feel, and then I'm going to close this diary and not read it back until this is over, she closed it. She did not sleep for a long time. The city outside her window looked different in the dark, not smaller, just more honest about what it was. A place where things happened between people who hadn't planned them, in buildings made of black glass that caught the sky and gave nothing back. She lay in the dark and thought about 12 weeks. 12 weeks in the same room. She thought about 3 seconds. She thought about a voice that said the grind setting is wrong and you're making hot water with aspirations and the floor is running cold, reported to facilities, 3 sentences across 3 months that constituted the entire conversation between them, and somehow she could replay all 3 with exact fidelity, tone and cadence and the specific weight of each word. She thought, I am in so much trouble, she thought, I know, she thought, good that night was the last night of the before. She didn't know that when it was happening. She would only know it later, the way you only ever know those nights in reverse, looking back at the last time you were completely safe and slightly bored and still entirely yourself, before something changed the whole grammar of your life. The diary was on the nightstand. The silver clasp caught the streetlight. 63 entries. 51 about him. In the morning, she would walk into the Voss Media building and take the elevator past 42. She would sit in a room with him for the first time as an equal participant in something, not a person delivering a file or adjusting coffee settings. She would hear him speak at length about something real. She would watch him work. She did not know yet what that would do to her. She fell asleep. The diary sat in the dark, clasp closed, silver catching nothing. The first Meridian review meeting was on a Thursday morning at 9. The 58th floor was different from every other floor in the building. Not visually, same gray carpet, same clean lines, same floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the city into a painting you could look at but not touch. It was something in the air. A quality of stillness that did not feel like peace. It felt like precision. Like the floor itself had been briefed. Sophia arrived 3 minutes early and sat in the chair closest to the door, which she told herself was practical and not at all about maintaining the fastest possible exit route. The other members of the acquisitions team filed in 2 lawyers from the legal department, a senior editor named Richard who had been at the company 11 years and carried it in his shoulders, and a financial analyst named J1 who dressed like he was 22 years old auditioning for a role in a film about someone 10 years older, and pulled it off completely. Adrian Voss walked in at 9 exactly. He sat at the head of the table, set a single legal pad in front of him, and looked at each person in the room for a brief, calibrating second. When his eyes reached Sophia, she looked down at her folder. When she looked back up, he had moved on to Richard. The Meridian catalog is 142 titles, he said. We have 12 weeks to assess commercial viability, right status, and cultural shelf life of the entire list. I want individual analysis by division, a consolidated recommendation by week 8, and a final acquisition framework by the end of week 12. He looked around the table. Questions before we begin? No one asked anything. He nodded once, like that was the correct answer, and they began. Sophia had prepared well. She had read the full catalog list, flagged 18 titles she considered high priority, and drafted preliminary notes on 10 of them. When her section came up, she was covering the literary fiction and narrative nonfiction categories. She spoke clearly and specifically, and she did not rush. Adrian Voss listened to her the way he appeared to do most things. Complete attention. No interrupting. When she finished, he asked 2 questions, both precise, both things she had the answers to. She gave the answers. He wrote something on the legal pad. Good, he said. 1 word. Flat as a table. Richard, beside her, leaned over slightly and muttered, "That's a compliment." I didn't get one. Sophia looked at the table so she wouldn't smile. The weeks began to stack. Thursday meetings at 9. Sometimes a midweek call about specific titles. Occasionally, when the timeline required it, a second full meeting on Tuesday. The 58th floor became familiar the way foreign cities become familiar, first threatening, then navigable, then yours in a quiet way you couldn't quite explain to people who hadn't been there. She learned to read the room Adrian Voss was in. Everyone on the project did, eventually, because it was survival. But Sophia noticed things the others didn't pay attention to, or didn't think were worth recording. The legal pad, he always used a legal pad, never a laptop, never a tablet, and his handwriting was compact and left-leaning, the kind of handwriting that suggests a person who learned it deliberately rather than organically. The coffee, always from the kitchen himself, never from the assistant, always the same fine-grind espresso. The specific quality of silence he produced when he disagreed with something, not cold, not hostile, just a brief absence of response that made you realize, in retrospect, that he had been agreeing with you all along by the simple act of continuing the conversation. He did not disagree with Sophia often. The first time he did, week 3, a Tuesday call, the issue of a literary novel she had flagged as high priority, he did it the way he did everything. Directly. No warming up to it. The cultural shelf life is shorter than you're projecting, he said. I don't think so, Sophia said. On the call, a brief silence. Explain why, he said. She explained. She had thought it through. She had reasons. She gave them all, clearly, in order, without hedging or overqualifying. Another silence. Shorter this time. Revise your timeline by 2 years and, we agree, he said. Send the update to Marcus by end of day. She sent the update. She had been right about the book and he had conceded the substance of it while adjusting the margin. She thought about that. He doesn't need to win asterisk, she wrote that night. Asterisk, he needs to be correct. Those are different things and not everyone can tell them apart. Asterisk, week 5 was when things changed. It was a Thursday meeting that ran long past 7, past 8, past the point where the building's daytime population had gone home and the floor had a different quality entirely. Quieter. More exposed somehow. Like a stage after the audience leaves. J1 had an early flight. The lawyers left at 6:30. Richard had a family obligation. By 7:15 it was just Sophia and Adrian Voss and the last 60 pages of the catalog and a window full of the city going dark. He worked without apparent awareness of the time. She worked the same way. They moved through the remaining titles with a kind of wordless coordination that surprised her, each of them somehow knowing without discussion when the other was done with a section, when a page needed to be revisited, when silence meant thinking rather than hesitation. At 8:20 he set down his pen. "Have you eaten?" he said. Sophia looked up. The question seemed to have surprised him as much as it surprised her. Like it had arrived in his mouth from somewhere he hadn't expected. "Not since noon," she said. He stood. He walked to the small side office that connected to the main conference room. She had never been in it before, had only glimpsed it through the glass. She heard a drawer open. He came back with 2 granola bars and set one on the table in front of her without comment, like this was an established procedure, like people who worked past 8 on the 58th floor were always provisioned. She looked at the granola bar. She looked at him. "Thank you," she said. He was already reading again. She ate the granola bar and went back to the catalog and thought, oh no, that was the night her diary changed tone. She had been careful, all those weeks. Careful in the diary, careful in the room, careful about the difference between finding someone fascinating and letting that become something structural, something that held weight. She had been so careful. The granola bar broke it. Not because it was romantic, it wasn't. It was a granola bar from a desk drawer. The most efficient possible response to the problem of a person who hadn't eaten. But that was exactly the point. It was so purely practical, so utterly devoid of performance, that it landed on her like something private. Like witnessing a moment that wasn't meant to be witnessed. He hadn't thought about how it would look. He'd simply solved the problem. Week 5, Thursday, she wrote. He works late. He keeps food in the desk drawer in the side office like an emergency kit. He gave me a granola bar at 8:20 without looking up. Like it was nothing. Like taking care of the person in the room with him was just what you did, I am so far past careful. I don't know when that happened, I know when that happened. It happened the moment the granola bar hit the table, I need to be very, very sensible, she tried to be sensible. She was mostly not sensible. The weeks ran. Week 6. Week 7. They were deeper in the catalog now, past the commercial titles and into the complicated literary estate questions that required careful judgment and cross-departmental coordination. J1 had gone back to mostly financial modeling. The lawyers were in and out. It was Sophia and Richard and Adrian Voss, mostly, in that room on Thursday mornings, and increasingly on Tuesday afternoons as the week 8 deadline for the consolidated recommendation approached. Richard, who had 11 years of the company in his bones, took her aside one Tuesday near the elevator. "He talks to you differently," Richard said. He was not unkind. He was simply observant. "I've been in rooms with him for a decade. He doesn't engage. Not like that. He gives direction. He receives reports. With you it's different. We just disagree sometimes," Sophia said. "He seems to find it useful. He finds it interesting," Richard said. "There's a difference." He paused. "I'm not telling you anything. I'm just noticing. The way people notice weather." She thought about that all the way back to 42. She thought about it through the rest of the afternoon. She wrote about it that night, and then crossed out what she'd written, and then wrote it again because crossing it out didn't make it not true. Richard said he talks to me differently, I know he talks to me differently. I've known for weeks. I've been very carefully not thinking about what that means because thinking about it would require me to decide something and I don't know what to decide, The thing is, when he disagrees with me, he wants me to defend the position. He doesn't want me to concede. He pushes back to see if I'll hold the argument or fold it, and, when I hold it, something in his face does a thing I can't describe accurately. Not satisfaction. Not quite respect. Something quieter than both of those, it feels like being seen by something that doesn't look at most things, I should go to sleep, I'm not going to sleep, week 9. The consolidated recommendation was submitted. They had a day off from the project, by unspoken agreement, before beginning the final 3-week push. Sophia spent it in the 42nd floor office reading a new manuscript pile and eating lunch at her desk and feeling, for the first time in 2 months, the particular strangeness of a normal day. That evening, she was the last person on her floor. The building hummed. The city went purple through the windows. She was shutting down her computer when the elevator opened behind her and Adrian Voss walked across the empty floor with his coat over his arm, heading for the stairwell that connected to the executive parking. He stopped when he saw her. "Still here," he said. "Manuscript pile," she said. He looked at the pile. Something happened at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, but a near miss. The closest thing she had seen to one. "I should have warned you," he said. Meridian's literary fiction category is a humanitarian crisis. She laughed. She had not planned to laugh. It came out of her honest and unguarded, and, in the empty floor of the building, it was the only sound in the world for a second. He looked at her when she laughed. He looked at her the way she had stopped letting herself think about, with that quality of attention that felt like something being registered, something being filed somewhere more permanent than usual. Then, it was over. He said good night. He took the stairwell. The door closed. She stood in the empty floor of the coffin and understood, with the flat clarity of something that has been true for a while and, finally, stopped hiding, that she was in love with Adrian Voss. Not a little. Not ambiguously. Not in the manageable, deniable way she had been operating under for months. All the way in. She sat back down at her desk. She did not open the diary. She just sat there for a long time. Week 10. Week 11. They were finishing the acquisition framework. The work was dense and required total attention, and Sophia gave it total attention and was, by every professional measure, at her best. Helen sent her a brief message at the end of week 10 that said simply, "excellent work." This will be noted, which was, in Helen's vocabulary, close to a parade. She wrote in the diary every few nights. Shorter entries now. Like she was conserving something. He brought coffee for both of us on Tuesday. He didn't ask. He just set it on the table. Same cup he always made for himself, week 10. His handwriting on the legal pad. Today I saw it clearly for the first time. He presses very hard on the paper. Whatever he's thinking, he means it. I found a story in the Meridian catalog tonight, a short novel nobody had flagged. I read 40 pages. It's extraordinary. I want to tell him. I'll tell him in the Tuesday meeting. The anticipation of that is embarrassing. The last week. Week 12. They had 4 days to finalize the framework. On Monday and Tuesday they were all in the room together, the full team for the first time in weeks, lawyers and analysts and Richard and Sophia and Adrian Voss, the final document taking shape line by line. On Wednesday night, Sophia was working late again. Not unusual. She had a laptop open and a printed draft of the framework on the desk and 3 red-flagged pages of revisions, and the city was dark outside and the building was down to its skeleton crew of security and maintenance. She heard voices from the small side office through the glass. She was not trying to listen. The voices carried. Adrian Voss and someone she didn't know, a voice she hadn't heard before, male, older, with the tone of someone who had earned a particular kind of access. She was reaching for her phone to check a reference number when she heard her name. "The Reyes girl," the other voice said. "From acquisitions." A pause. "Don't be absurd," Adrian Voss said. Flat. Immediate. The same tone she had heard him use to close a line of reasoning that had no business continuing. She went very still. There was something about the framework deadline, something about a legal issue with one of the titles, but she heard none of it. She heard only those 3 words, replaying with the mechanical precision of something her brain had decided was important enough to keep forever. "Don't be absurd, *" She closed her laptop. She put the printed draft into her bag. She stood up. She did it all slowly and carefully, like a person who had broken something and was walking around the pieces. She got her coat from the back of her chair. She got her bag. She walked to the elevator and pressed the button and waited. The elevator opened. She went home. That night she opened the diary to a clean page and sat with it for a long time before she wrote anything. The pen in her hand. The silver clasp catching the lamplight. Outside the window the city was doing what it always did, existing without reference to what happened inside it. She wrote. Wednesday, week 12. Late, he said, don't be absurd. I know what it means. I've always known what it means. It means I made something out of nothing, which is a very specific kind of stupid I have managed before and can manage again, but knowing doesn't make it smaller. It just makes it accurate, he's not wrong. It is absurd. A girl from 42 and a man who runs 60 floors like a weather system. It's absurd in the way that facts are absurd when you look at them plainly, I think I need to leave, not dramatically. Not because anything has happened. Because I've been careful for 6 months and I'm not capable of being careful anymore and I'd rather leave well than leave badly, Helen will understand. Or she won't. Either way, I'm going to finish the week. I'm going to do the work correctly because the work is good and deserves that. And then, I'm going to put in my notice, I'm going to be fine. I've been fine before when I didn't expect to be, she paused. The city outside. The lamp. The pen. I just want to say one thing, in here, where nobody will see it, I don't think don't be absurd is the whole truth. I think it's most of the truth and the rest of it is something he filed away under things that cannot happen. Which is different from things that don't exist, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything, I'm going to leave, she closed the diary. She set it on her nightstand. She lay down in the dark and looked at the ceiling and breathed very slowly and evenly, the way you learn to breathe when you want to make sure you don't make any sound you'd have to explain. The last 2 days of the project were the cleanest work she had ever done in her life. She was precise. She was focused. She caught 2 issues in the framework that the lawyers had missed and corrected them without making it a point of pride. In the final Thursday meeting, when Adrian Voss went through the completed documents section by section and arrived at the acquisitions analysis, he looked at her. Thorough, he said. Thank you, she said, and met his eyes for exactly long enough to be professional. On Thursday evening, she went to Helen's office and gave her notice. 3 weeks, fully worked, all obligations met. Helen listened. Helen's face did not change in any way that was informative. At the end, she said, is there anything that would change this? No, Sophia said. Helen nodded once. 3 weeks, then. We'll make it clean. Sophia went back to her desk. She packed nothing, she'd collect her things gradually so it looked normal. She pulled open her desk drawer to look for a USB drive and instead found the Navy diary. She set it inside the drawer, on top of the USB drive, and then closed it. She went home. She would come back for it. She would definitely come back for it. 3 weeks later, on her last day, she spent the morning in back-to-back handover meetings and the afternoon writing documentation for whoever came after her. Helen said goodbye with a firm handshake and the word rigorous one more time, which Sophia received like a medal. J1 and Priya and the 2 people from legal all said something warm. Richard gave her a hug in the elevator lobby and told her the next place was lucky. At 4:30 she took the elevator down to the lobby. She went through the black glass doors. She walked out into the street. She did not remember the diary in the desk drawer until she was 4 blocks away. She stopped on the sidewalk. She thought about going back. She thought about the elevator. The 58th floor. The specific quality of a room that had been his. She thought about how much courage it had taken to get out of the building and how unsure she was that she had a second round of it. She thought, I'll come back for it next week. She walked to the subway. She did not come back next week. She did not come back at all. It was Marcus who found it, 8 months later, on a Tuesday in October. The 42nd floor was being redistributed. Two departments were merging, content acquisitions folding into a restructured editorial division, and the process required clearing the old section's workstations for the incoming team. Marcus had been sent down to supervise the inventory, which mostly meant standing in the corridor with a clipboard while two facilities staff members boxed and labeled and asked him which things could be disposed of and which should be transferred. He was going through the desks systematically when he reached Sophia's old station. Most of it had been cleared when she left. The drawers were thin with absence, a few generic items, a USB drive with nothing on it, a dead pen. He was about to mark it for clearing when he pulled the last drawer open and found the diary. Navy blue. Small. Silver clasp. He turned it over in his hands. There was nothing written on the outside. No name, no label. But he had done this job long enough to know the difference between a notebook someone abandoned and something someone had left behind. The clasp was worn in the way things were when they are handled regularly, when they are picked up and set down and picked up again over months and months. The cover had the specific softness of something that had spent a great deal of time on a nightstand. This was not office property. He set it aside separately from the clearance pile. He thought about it for the rest of the morning. He thought about the quiet girl from acquisitions who had worked the Meridian project and left 2 weeks after it was finished, cleanly and without drama, the way competent people left when they had decided something privately and finished it before they said it out loud. He thought about the way Adrian Voss had asked, casually, once 6 weeks after she'd left, over a transition report that didn't require his personal involvement, whether the acquisition's handover had been completed correctly, and then had not mentioned it again. Marcus thought about a great many things in the course of a day. He was very good at thinking about things and not asking about them. He brought the diary upstairs at the end of his shift. He set it on Adrian Voss's desk. He put a small note under it with Sophia's name and the notation found in 42nd floor clearance, personal item. He left it and went home. Adrian came back to his office at 7:15. He had been in a finance call that ran long, as finance calls tended to do, and he was tired in the flat, structural way he got tired at the end of a day that had required more calibration than usual. He wanted 20 minutes with his legal pad and a coffee and then the drive home. He saw the diary. He picked it up. He read Marcus's note. He set the note down. He turned the diary over in his hands. He should have sent it to her. That was the correct and professional action. Marcus had her last forwarding address on file, he had everything on file. He should have set it in the outbox, had Marcus mail it in the morning, closed the matter. He sat down. He set the diary in front of him on the desk. He looked at it for a moment. The silver clasp. The worn cover. The city outside the window, going dark for the second time today. He opened it. He glanced at me today, 4 words. First page. The handwriting was small and slightly tilted right, the way handwriting tilts when someone is left-handed writing on a surface that isn't quite at the right height. He set the diary flat on the desk and kept reading. Her voice in the early entries had a particular quality, careful, observant, with a dry humor that surfaced at odd moments like something that couldn't quite keep itself submerged. She wrote the way she spoke in meetings, directly, without hedging, with occasional digressions that she sometimes crossed out halfway through and then rewrote more honestly. The grind setting is wrong. He said that like it was a diagnosis. Like the coffee machine had a condition and he was the only one who could identify it. I think he might approach the whole world that way, he paused on that one. He remembered the kitchen. He remembered the dial. He had not thought about it since it happened. It appeared to have occupied a different category for her. He kept reading. The Vampire King. That's what they call him. I looked up vampire mythology last night, which is probably the most embarrassing thing I've written in this diary, and I've only written in it for 3 weeks. But there's a logic to it that I can't quite dismiss, not the blood drinking, obviously, but the part about being sustained by something other people don't have access to. The part about existing outside the normal rules of damage *, I wonder if he knows they call him that. I wonder if he would care *, he turned the page. He was reading faster now, without meaning to. The entries from the early weeks were short. Observational. She catalogued details with the attention of someone who had trained herself to notice things: the legal pad, the coffee, the specific silence he used for disagreement, the way he looked when he was tired. She had noticed the tired. He was startled by that. He had not known it was visible. He walked past 42 and I caught his eye through the glass for exactly 1 second. He looked tired. Not the way people look tired when they haven't slept. The way old buildings look tired, like they've been carrying something for a long time and have simply made it part of their structure. I don't know why I noticed that. I don't know why it matters. He sat with that for a moment. Then, he turned the page. The entries from December. The dinner with her friend, Nadia. The name came up often, with the warmth of something long established. He read the lines about what Nadia had said. She's right. I know she's right. I'm not staring into the eclipse, but I know exactly where it is. I know the quality of light it makes around itself. He stopped. He turned the page slowly. The entries from the project weeks were longer. More detailed. She wrote about the work with the same precision she brought to the actual meetings: clear analysis, honest assessment, the occasional sharp observation about the process or the other team members. But there was something running underneath the work entries, a parallel current, and she did not always hide it. He disagreed with my timeline on the Baxter novel. I pushed back. He adjusted his position while holding the frame, which is harder than either agreeing or refusing. He does that. He finds the place where two things are both true and stands there without needing to pick one. Today he asked 2 questions during my section. Both of them were the 2 questions I would have asked if I were him. That doesn't happen often with other people. He read the entry about the granola bar. He had not thought about it once. It was a problem. A person hadn't eaten, there was food in the drawer, the problem was solved. He read how it had landed for her and felt something he did not immediately have a name for. He gave me a granola bar at 8:20 without looking up. Like taking care of the person in the room with him was just what you did. Like it wasn't a gesture at all, just a reflex. I am so far past careful. He turned to the entry from the empty floor. Week 9. Her laugh. He remembered the empty floor. He remembered the sound of it, unguarded, real, with the quality that laughter has when it isn't performed for anyone. He had not thought about it after it happened. He had gone down the stairwell and driven home and filed it under nothing because there was nowhere to file it that was safe. She had written about it. Week 9, Thursday evening. He made a joke about the literary fiction catalog being a humanitarian crisis. I laughed. Not the polite kind. The real kind. In the empty floor, loud, and, for a second it was the only sound in the building. He looked at me when I laughed. Not like he was amused by it. Like something had been confirmed. I understood something clearly tonight that I have been not understanding for months. I'm in love with him. All the way in. Not a little. I don't know what to do with that. He stopped reading. He sat back in his chair. The city outside the window. The lamp on his desk. The diary open in his hands. He had known. He understood that now, reading her words, seeing the map of it laid out in her careful left-leaning handwriting, he recognized something he had registered months ago and filed under inadmissible, under disqualified, under do not enter. He had done that filing efficiently, the way he did everything, and he had not gone back to check it. He turned the page. The entries from weeks 10 and 11 were shorter. Quieter. Like she was conserving something. His handwriting presses hard into the paper. Whatever he thinks, he means it completely. I found a novel in the catalog tonight. 40 pages in and it's extraordinary. I want to tell him. I'll tell him Tuesday. The anticipation of that is embarrassing and I don't care. Week 11. I think Richard knows. He looked at me today in that way people look at you when they know something and have decided to be kind about it. The last entry from week 12 began at the bottom of a page. He turned to it slowly. Wednesday, week 12. Late *, he recognized the date. He checked against his memory. The evening meeting. The framework deadline. His office, the side office where he'd been reviewing the legal notes on one of the estate titles with Daniel Forrester, the company's outside counsel, who had been with the firm for 20 years and had a habit of asking questions that were not quite within his professional remit. He read it. He said, "Don't be absurd." He went very still. "I know what it means. I've always known what it means. It means I made something out of nothing." He read it again. He read the sentence she had written after. "I think I need to leave." He put the diary flat on the desk. He pressed both palms against the surface of the desk. He looked at the ceiling. He thought about Daniel Forrester's voice, which he hadn't been thinking about at the time. He had been half reading a document, which was why he'd answered without looking up, without context, without knowing what he was answering. "Don't be absurd." 3 words fired at a question he hadn't fully heard, from a man asking about something he hadn't been paying attention to, in a room he hadn't known she was sitting outside of. He picked up the diary. The entries after the Wednesday became the hardest to read. She was clean. Honest. Not bitter, not small, not circling the pain to make it mean something different than it was. She simply recorded it. Thursday, last week. I did good work today. The framework is finished. He said thorough. I received that correctly. I gave my notice to Helen this evening. 3 weeks. She asked if anything would change it. I said no. The no was true and, also it was the bravest word I've said in a year. I'm going to be fine. I've been fine before under worse conditions. Then, the last entry before she left. Short. Plain. Her handwriting the same as on the first page, small, slightly tilted, pressed lightly into the paper, nothing performed. He read it. Last day. Friday, I'm leaving in an hour. Helen gave me rigorous one more time, which is the Helen equivalent of a standing ovation. Richard hugged me. J1 made a joke about the Meridian literary fiction catalog that was funny. I have the diary in my bag. I'm going to go home and read it from the beginning and see what it looks like when it's finished. I think I should say the real thing, here, in the last entry, because I've been very careful about almost everything except being honest in here, and this diary deserves honesty. I didn't leave because of "don't be absurd." I mean, I did, but not the way I wrote it the night it happened. I left because 3 weeks before I left, I started to understand that it wasn't nothing. That the way he argued with me meant something. That the granola bar was something. That the empty floor and the laugh was something. I understood all of that, and then I heard "don't be absurd," and I thought, good. This is the door. Because if I stayed, I would have told him. And if I told him, he would have had to decide something. And I know, with no evidence and no proof, just the knowledge that comes from watching someone work and argue and make coffee and press hard on paper because he means everything he writes. I know he would have tried. He would have tried to make it work. He would have put the same attention into it that he puts into everything, which is total, which is complete, which is the thing I love most about him and the most impossible thing about him at the same time. And he would have had to give things up. Not big things necessarily. But things that cost time. The specific quality of precision his life has right now. The complete control of where his attention goes. I couldn't let him do that. Not for me. Not for a girl from 42 who noticed his hands in an elevator and wrote about it in a Navy diary for 8 months. So I took the door when it was open. He was right. Don't be absurd. He was also wrong. But being right is more useful, and I needed useful. I love him. That's the first and last time I'll write that in full. I love him the way you love something that's too large for the life you have, and you know it, and you love it anyway, and you leave. Goodbye, coffin. Goodbye. He closed the diary. The office was silent. The city outside had gone fully dark, full night, the kind of October night that is clear and cold and carries sounds farther than usual. From somewhere far below he could hear a siren, very distant, moving away. He sat with it. He sat with the weight of 8 months of her, compressed into a navy blue diary with a worn silver clasp. He sat with the granola bar and the coffee settings and the 3 seconds in the kitchen and the empty floor and the laugh and all the Thursday mornings, the work she had done impeccably while carrying this, the way she had looked at him in the last meeting and said thank you and meant it for something larger and smaller at the same time. He sat with I know he would have tried, he sat with I couldn't let him, the diary in his lap. The city below. The lamp throwing a circle of light that did not reach the corners of the room. He thought about what it cost to be correct about someone. To understand someone's capacity before they knew it themselves. To love them carefully enough to leave. He thought about the floor she'd been on. The drawer. 8 months of her handwriting sitting in a drawer while he was 60 floors above it and did not know. He picked up the diary. He opened it again, not to read, just to look at it. The specific blue. The worn edges. He turned to the first page. He glanced at me today, asterisk he closed it. He reached across the desk and picked up his phone. Marcus answered on the second ring, which meant he was awake, which meant he had been expecting a call, which meant Marcus had read the note he'd left and had thought about it for 8 hours and arrived at a conclusion. The forwarding address, Adrian said. A pause. The specific quality of silence that belonged to Marcus, knowing, patient, without judgment. I have it, Marcus said. Send it to me. The call ended. He sat in the lamplight with the diary and waited for the message to come through. Outside, the October city was dark and cold and full of things still in motion, taxis and lives running toward and away from things they hadn't named yet, toward doors they were choosing to take or not to take, toward the specific courage required to say the real thing out loud in the last entry, to a diary with a worn silver clasp, in a drawer you forgot on purpose or didn't, in a building made of black glass that caught the sky and gave nothing back. His phone lit up. He read the address. He stood. He put his coat on. He picked up the diary. He did not leave it on the desk, it didn't belong there, it belonged to her, and he was going to give it back, and he was going to say the thing he had filed under inadmissible, under disqualified, under do not enter 8 months ago and left there without checking whether the filing was accurate or merely convenient. He took the elevator down. He went through the black glass doors. The city was cold and clear and the night carried sounds farther than usual, his footsteps on the sidewalk, the siren still moving somewhere far away, the city doing what cities do, enormous and indifferent, existing without reference to what happened inside it. He walked to his car. He drove. She was home. She was always home on Tuesday nights. She had a ritual. Tuesday nights she cooked something real and called Nadia and read for an hour before bed. She had done it since the November she started at Voss Media, because some rituals form around the need for something steady when everything else is uncertain, and this one had stayed. She was reading when her phone rang. Unknown number. City prefix. She almost didn't answer. She answered. The voice on the other end was exactly as she remembered, low, flat, built for boardrooms and the silences that make lawyers nervous. The voice that had said the grind setting is wrong and you're making hot water with aspirations and good and thorough and, without knowing she was there to hear it, don't be absurd, I have your diary, Adrian Voss said. The book in her lap. The lamp. The city outside her window, far from his, 60 floors from the room where she had left the navy blue thing with the worn silver clasp and a desk drawer she'd told herself she would come back for. She closed her eyes. She opened them. I know, she said. Because she had known, in the way you know the things you've decided not to check. She had left it there the way you leave a door unlocked when you don't want to be the one who opens it. A silence. The particular quality of his silences, not absence, presence. Something on the other end of it that was being processed and released. I read it, he said. She said nothing. All of it. She still said nothing. Her thumb pressed against the cover of the book in her lap, a different book, someone else's story, and she looked at the city outside her window and breathed the slow even breath of a person who had practiced this, who had gotten very good at making no sound. You were wrong about one thing, he said. She waited. I wouldn't have given anything up, he said. I would have made room. The city. The lamp. The sound of her own breathing. That's what I'm good at, he said. Making room for things that matter. You would have known that if you'd stayed long enough to let me show you. She pressed her thumb harder into the cover of the book. He would have tried, asterisk she had written. He would have put the same attention into it that he puts into everything. She had been right. She had also, she understood now, sitting in her apartment on a Tuesday night with the phone against her ear, been wrong about the most important part. She had thought love was choosing between someone and everything else. She had thought that was the equation. She had done the math and she had gotten the answer wrong. I'm on your street, he said. She looked at the window. The street below. She stood up. She went to the window. Down on the street, in the cold October night, under the lamp, standing beside a car she didn't recognize, a man. Tall. Dark coat. Looking up. He was looking at her window. The phone was still in her hand. She looked at him from above. He looked at her from below. The city moved around them both, enormous and unhurried, doing what it always did. You kept the diary, she said. I'll give it back, he said. A pause. She could hear the city in it, the distance between them, and also the absence of it. Come up, she said. She watched him move toward the building door. She was still at the window when she heard the knock. She crossed the room. She put her hand on the door handle. She thought of the first entry, 4 words on the first page of a navy blue diary on the night of a November Tuesday that had split everything into before and after. She opened the door. He was standing in the hallway, coat still on, collar open at the button the way it always was, the diary in his left hand, small and navy blue, silver clasp worn the way things wear when they are handled with care, regularly, over a long time. He held it out. She took it. She held it in both hands. She looked at it. She looked at him. His face all geometry and decided angles, the first thread of silver at the temple, the mouth that had made up its mind about the world and stopped revising it. It looked different up close. It looked like someone who had driven across the city on a Tuesday in October because a diary said something he had filed under inadmissible and he had gone back to check whether the filing was correct. It looked, very specifically, like a man who had been told he would try and had come to prove that trying was not the right word. She stepped back from the door. He came in. The diary was in her hands and the door was open behind him and the lamp was on and the city was outside the window, enormous and indifferent and, not once, in all its history, caring at all about what happened inside the buildings it surrounded. The door closed. The lamp threw its circle of light. Outside, October moved through the city the way October always did, clear and cold, carrying sounds farther than usual. A siren, far away. The hum of a street alive at midnight. The specific music of a city that did not know and did not need to know that somewhere inside it, in an apartment on a Tuesday night, a woman was holding a navy diary with a worn silver clasp and a man was standing in her light and neither of them was filing anything under do not enter anymore. The first entry said, he glanced at me today, the last entry said, I love him, he had read every word in between. Now he was here. Now was when the story started.